India has just made a decision that could reshape global technology dominance. In a move that has sent shockwaves through Washington, New Delhi has selected Huawei over American tech giants for its nationwide 5G infrastructure rollout. Former President Trump has responded with unprecedented fury, calling this the biggest technology betrayal of the century. As the United States loses ground in the race for global tech supremacy, we must analyze what this means for the future of American technological leadership and the escalating tech Cold War between the world's superpowers, U.S. China tech war. The technological conflict between the United States and China represents more than just another chapter in great power competition. This is a strategic battle for the future of global digital infrastructure, with both nations recognizing that whoever controls the technological landscape of tomorrow will shape the international order for decades to come. Since 2018, Washington has deployed an increasingly sophisticated arsenal of measures designed to impede Chinese technological advancement, particularly targeting companies like Huawei that threaten American dominance in critical sectors. The U.S. approach has operated on multiple fronts simultaneously. Through the Commerce Department's Entity List, Washington has restricted American companies from selling components to Chinese tech firms without special licenses. These export controls have specifically targeted advanced semiconductor technology, the foundation of modern computing and telecommunications. Simultaneously, America has applied extraordinary diplomatic pressure on allied nations, with high-ranking officials traveling globally to convince governments to exclude Chinese equipment from their critical infrastructure networks. Perhaps most notably, the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, CFES, has blocked numerous Chinese acquisitions of American technology companies, effectively creating a financial firewall around U.S. innovation. These measures collectively represent the most comprehensive technological containment strategy since the Cold War restrictions against the Soviet Union. What has proven particularly remarkable, however, is China's response to these constraints. Rather than capitulating to American pressure, Chinese firms have accelerated their drive toward technological self-sufficiency. Huawei's transformation provides the clearest illustration of this adaptation. When the U.S. government cut Huawei off from American microchips and Google's Android operating system, many analysts predicted the company's imminent collapse. Instead, Huawei accelerated the development of its own Harmony OS operating system and invested billions in alternative supply chains. The 2019 release of Huawei's Mate 30 smartphone marked a critical turning point in this technological decoupling. For the first time, the company produced a flagship device containing zero American components, replacing U.S. chips with alternatives sourced from Europe and Asia. This achievement represented not merely a corporate milestone, but a strategic national victory for China's technological independence. The unanticipated consequence of America's restrictions has been the rapid maturation of China's domestic technology ecosystem. When denied access to American technology, Chinese companies had no choice but to develop indigenous alternatives. The country's semiconductor industry, once generations behind the United States, has made remarkable progress in recent years. While still lagging in the most advanced chip manufacturing processes, China has built robust capabilities that increasingly meet its domestic needs. Beyond hardware, China has constructed a parallel digital universe, complete with its own social media platforms, payment systems, and cloud infrastructure that operates entirely independently from Silicon Valley. This digital sovereignty provides China with strategic advantages that extend well beyond economics into the realms of information control and national security. The stakes of this technological confrontation are perhaps most evident in the global competition for 5G infrastructure dominance. Unlike previous wireless standards, 5G will serve as the foundation for entirely new categories of applications, from autonomous vehicles to smart cities to industrial automation. The networks that countries deploy today will determine their economic competitiveness for years to come, while potentially creating dependencies that carry significant geopolitical implications. 5G infrastructure represents not merely communications technology, but the nervous system of the digital economy. The company that builds these networks gains privileged access to the data flowing through them, creating both commercial advantages and potential intelligence opportunities. This explains why Washington has expended so much political capital attempting to persuade allies to exclude Huawei from their telecommunications infrastructure, India's strategic pivot. While Washington has been urging allies to reject Chinese technology, India's decision tells a very different story. One where economic pragmatism trumps geopolitical pressure. The world's largest democracy has embraced the very company America has spent years warning against, revealing a fundamental shift in how emerging powers navigate the technological Cold War between Beijing and Washington. India's position as a major non-aligned power places it in a unique strategic situation. With historical ties to the Soviet Union during the Cold War and growing economic partnerships with both the United States and China in recent decades, New Delhi has consistently maintained what policymakers call strategic autonomy. This approach allows India to pursue relationships with competing powers simultaneously while avoiding formal alignment with any single bloc. The selection of Huawei for critical 5G infrastructure represents perhaps the most significant test of this balancing act in the digital age. Behind closed doors, Indian officials conducted rigorous technical evaluations that ultimately favored Huawei's offerings. The assessment found that Chinese 5G technology provided substantial performance advantages at significantly lower cost than Western alternatives from Nokia, Ericsson, or potential American vendors. These technical superiorities proved decisive factors for a nation seeking to rapidly transform its digital landscape while managing limited public resources. For Indian policymakers, the practical benefits of faster, more affordable 5G deployment outweighed abstract security concerns that lacked concrete evidence. The cost differential between Huawei and Western alternatives was particularly compelling for a developing economy like India. Estimates suggest implementing Huawei's 5G solutions could save billions in infrastructure costs while accelerating deployment timelines by 12 to 18 months. This acceleration directly supports India's ambitious digital transformation objectives, including expanding internet access to rural communities and fostering growth in emerging tech sectors like artificial intelligence, cloud computing, and Internet of Things applications. India's domestic technology aspirations significantly influenced this decision. The country has been promoting itself as a potential global manufacturing hub through initiatives like Make in India, attempting to position itself as an alternative to China for technology production. Huawei has reportedly offered substantial technology transfer arrangements and manufacturing partnerships that align with these national objectives. These promises of knowledge sharing and local production capacity building provided additional incentives beyond the immediate infrastructure benefits. This technological pragmatism reflects a broader pattern emerging among developing nations. Countries like Indonesia, Brazil, South Africa, and Malaysia have similarly resisted American pressure to exclude Chinese vendors from their telecommunications infrastructure. These nations increasingly prioritize concrete economic benefits over participation in geopolitical competitions that primarily serve great power interests. For populations eager to access advanced digital services, delays in technological adoption for geopolitical reasons appear increasingly unjustifiable. The question now becomes whether India's decision signals a more comprehensive strategic recalculation. While New Delhi maintains that telecommunications infrastructure choices represent technical rather than geopolitical decisions, the practical effect creates economic interdependence with Chinese technology ecosystems. This interdependence could influence future strategic choices across multiple domains, from trade relationships to diplomatic positions on contested issues. The technology choices of today invariably shape the strategic options available tomorrow. Security concerns raised by Washington about potential backdoors, data theft, or network vulnerabilities ultimately proved less persuasive than the tangible benefits of Chinese technology. Indian security analysts concluded that proper regulatory frameworks and network monitoring could mitigate potential risks while capturing the economic and technological advantages of Huawei's systems. This risk management approach directly challenges the absolutist position advocated by American officials, who argue that Chinese vendors pose inherent, unmanageable security threats. Trump's reaction and the domestic political fallout. India's decision to choose Huawei for its 5G infrastructure has triggered an unprecedented response from former President Donald Trump, who has publicly labeled the move a direct assault on American technological leadership. In a recent statement at his Mar-a-Lago residence, Trump declared that India has made a catastrophic mistake that undermines decades of cooperation and warned of severe economic consequences should the decision stand. This rhetoric marks a significant escalation from the cautious diplomatic language typically employed in U.S.-India relations. The former president's response goes beyond mere disappointment, suggesting potential retaliatory measures including targeted tariffs on Indian goods and a comprehensive review of all technology transfer agreements between the two nations. These threats have sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles, with the Indian embassy in Washington issuing a measured response emphasizing their sovereign right to make infrastructure decisions based on their national interests. Within Washington, the response has fractured along partisan lines. Several Republican senators, including Tom Cotton and Marco Rubio, have echoed Trump's concerns, with Senator Cotton proposing legislation that would automatically trigger sanctions against countries adopting Chinese 5G technology. We cannot stand by while our allies hand the keys to their digital infrastructure to the Chinese Communist Party, Cotton stated during a Senate hearing last week. Meanwhile, Democratic lawmakers have adopted a more nuanced approach. Representative Ro Khanna, who serves on the House Armed Services Committee, cautioned against punitive actions. India represents a crucial democratic counterweight to China and Asia. We must engage constructively rather than punish a strategic partner for what is ultimately a commercial decision. This divide reflects broader disagreements about how to maintain American technological leadership without alienating key allies. The ramifications for American technology companies have been immediate and severe. Qualcomm's stock dropped 7.2% following India's announcement, while Cisco experienced a 5.3% decline. Industry analysts project that American tech companies stand to lose approximately $14 billion in potential revenue over the next 5 years from India's 5G deployment alone. The ripple effects could be even more substantial if other nations follow India's example. Apple, which had been positioning itself to capture a significant portion of the premium 5G device market in India, now faces uncertainty about compatibility issues with Huawei's infrastructure. The company's CEO has remained notably silent on the matter, though internal sources reveal intense strategy sessions to address potential market challenges. One senior executive at a major U.S. telecommunications firm, speaking on condition of anonymity, admitted, "We've been caught flat-footed. Our assumption that geopolitical pressure would eliminate Huawei from major markets has proven dangerously incorrect. The economic implications extend beyond immediate market losses. American technology companies have collectively invested over $38 billion in 5G research and development since 2018, with projections that relied heavily on deployment across friendly democratic nations. The loss of the Indian market, projected to become the world's second-largest economy by 2050, represents a significant blow to these calculations. Trump and his allies have woven this development into a broader narrative of American decline under the current administration. At a recent campaign rally in Pennsylvania, Trump declared, "They're taking our technology, they're taking our jobs, and now they're taking our allies. America is being laughed at." This messaging has resonated with his base, with 68% of Republican voters now identifying technology competition with China as a top electoral concern according to recent polling. The controversy has become a centerpiece of pre-election positioning, with Republican candidates across congressional races highlighting the India-Huawei decision as evidence of failing American leadership on the global stage. Campaign advertisements featuring images of abandoned American factories juxtaposed with Chinese manufacturing facilities have become commonplace in swing districts. India's 5G decision marks a watershed moment in global technological competition. It illustrates a new reality where American technological influence faces genuine constraints, regardless of diplomatic pressure or security warnings. The landscape demands a fundamental reassessment of U.S. strategy. Washington must now pursue increased investment in domestic innovation ecosystems, particularly in critical areas like semiconductor development and next-generation wireless technologies. Trade policies require recalibration to balance legitimate security concerns with the pragmatic needs of international technology markets. As more nations make technology decisions based primarily on performance and economics rather than geopolitical alignment, America's path to maintaining leadership will depend on outcompeting rivals through superior innovation, not merely restricting access to existing technologies.